Hi, friends. Happy Saturday. I know I'm recording this on a Saturday, which feels really, really weird. But I am going to be flying next week. So this was the best day to get this recording in. Um, I am actually taking Lulu Joy with me for her very first plane ride to go visit my mom and grandma down in Florida. Um, be on the lookout for those pictures. Um, this will be the first time Lulu Joy is on an airplane. I may have upgraded my ticket to first class because, Lulu Joy, only the best from a homegirl. She is truly living her best life. So be on the lookout for that. But happy Saturday. Welcome for those of you that are new. Welcome. My name is Libby, and welcome to my audio journal, Finding Joy in the Shadows, where I spend time each week talking about the fun curveballs life throws our way and help us look for pockets of joy. This is an also this is also an opportunity for me to continue working through my own stuff, while also sharing ways to help anyone who might be listening to little old me work through some things in your life that you might be struggling with so that we can all find joy together, right? That's the goal. That's been the goal all along. For today's conversation, I am going to introduce you to my very own therapist and life coach, Amy. This was the first time I ever did an interview for anything like this. I mean, I've been in a job interview. I have conducted job interviews before, so I kind of knew what to do, but this was quite the learning experience. So I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation as much as we enjoyed talking to one another. I think it's a good representation of how our sessions typically flow. But as always, before we get started, let's spend a few minutes catching up on some LPs because, again, just like last time, there were quite a few things that happened. First, let's talk about the Olympic Games. The games are now officially over. Last episode, I was talking about the opening ceremonies, and now the games have concluded. They are officially over, and it's always a little sad when the games wrap up. For anyone else that gets real into the games and watches them on a daily basis, there's always that moment a few days after the closing ceremony where you're like, well, what do I watch now? I can't go from, you know, watching TV and hiding my eyes behind my hands because of the anticipation of not knowing what's going to happen, who's going to win. You just got this adrenaline coursing through you, cheering your home team on, right? How do you go from that to just watching, regular TV again? So it's always a little awkward. There's that little awkward phase in between the Olympics and the Paralympics. But thankfully, the Paralympics start on August 28th. So we only have to wait a couple of weeks. Um, I saw a post online that said something like, um, you know, why can't the Paralympics start right after the Olympics? And I will honestly say it's something I never thought about, probably because it's something I never had to think about, but it was really sweet. And the reason is just it's very wholesome. It's because they have to convert everything to accommodate the next set of athletes that are coming in. And I don't know why, but this really tugged at my heart. I remember being quite surprised when I heard other athletes, saying how, oh, as soon as you're done competing, you need to vacate the dorm as soon as possible. And when I first heard it, I thought that was pretty interesting, right? Didn't understand it. But it's because the organizers need as much time as they can to convert the village over for the next round of athletes that are going to be staying there. I don't know. That warmed my heart, knowing that the organizers are working so hard to take care of all of the athletes. So the games are over. How did Team USA do? Well, I don't want to brag, but we absolutely kicked butt. Okay, we kicked everybody's booty. Not only did we take home most of the medals, 126 in total. We also we I think we were tied for the lead with China. Okay. In 40 gold. But we brought home 44 silver and 42 bronze. And yes, that does count Jordan Childs' bronze medal. We'll get into that, but I'm counting hers as a bronze medal as well. So 126 medals total, which is phenomenal. And 63% of our medals came from the women. No shade, no shade. But Team USA, the ladies, we kicked booty too. So very, very proud of all of our athletes. It was very fun to watch. I think one of the things that I loved the most was seeing all the camaraderie amongst the athletes. Yes, of course, each athlete was cheering on the other athletes from their country, right? Of course, that was a given. That was a given. There was so much camaraderie amongst the athletes cheering one another on and celebrating their wins. And I'm getting goosebumps right now, just even like remembering it. So I really love that. It really felt, I don't know, man, Paris, you did a good job. Like there were some things that you did really, really well. And you just created this environment that just the athletes were thriving in and they were all being very supportive of one another. Okay, so with that said, there was still some drama, quite a bit of drama, and we're going to get into it now. So the 100-meter race on the women's side, um, I honestly, I'm still not really sure what happened. But when they have these heats, right? They have to keep, qualifying for the next race, the next race, the next race till they get to the medal round, right? Because there's so many athletes, they have to dwindle it to the final, what, 8 or 10 athletes that run in the final 100-meter race. Okay. So during one of these heats, these semifinals, the athletes got on their bus, right? It's not that they drove themselves to the event. They got on their bus with the other athletes, and the bus driver followed the directions and took them to their venue. And when they got there, the officials apparently had changed the rules, but didn't tell anybody, not even the bus driver. And they were like, yeah, you can't come in this way. Even though, yeah, you came in this way yesterday, we've changed it. You need to now go all the way around and go in that way. Now you can imagine these athletes, they are training at a level I can't even pretend to understand. They have a set of processes, they have a set of steps that they have to do in order to prepare themselves for these runs. Some of the athletes, one of the Jamaican racers, who is a phenomenal athlete, multiple gold winner, Shelly Ann Fraser Price. It got in her head having this mess up, right? And it wasn't her fault. It wasn't the bus driver's fault. It wasn't, the officials changed the rules and didn't tell anybody. Sha'Carri Richardson was also one of those athletes that had to regroup very quickly and figure out, first off, how the heck do I now get in this venue that I can now go and race? I read that the individuals that were caught up in this were not given ample time to warm up prior to the race. So you can imagine what that does to your body, right? As a non-runner, before I got into running, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought the racers just show up and then they start running. And that is just not the case. They are running, sprinting, like they are preparing and warming their body for the actual run, right? And so there are a lot of steps that have to take place. There's a lot of warm-ups. There's the mental warm-up. There's the physical warm-up. And I just felt really bad that this even had to become a thing, right? Okay, acknowledge that you changed the rules, but clearly the bus driver who was part of the official, agenda for the games, like, couldn't you have just let them in and be like, okay, for next time though, like, you need to come in the other gate? Like, there's got to be some leniency here because again, these athletes did not drive themselves there. They got on an official bus with all of their badges. So it's not like these were just anybody that was trying to get in this particular gate. Okay. Speaking of the buses, apparently some of the buses did not have air conditioning. And poor Simone Biles was getting taunted on social media because her hair was looking a bit frizzy. Yeah, for reals. This is what people were apparently focusing on. And it got so loud that Simone literally had to come on to social media and state for the record, there was no air conditioning on the bus. Sorry, my hair looks messy, right? Homegirl is literally one of the most prestigious, best athletes on the face of the planet, not just in America, but like in the face of the planet. And she is flipping through the air. I don't know how she does it. And on her way to the venue in very hot, humid weather, she's sitting on a bus. We've all been in that situation before when you're sitting on a crowded bus, there's no air circulating. You're going to start to sweat. And if you have curly hair, your hair is going to start to frizz and it's not going to look great. But even with whatever hair people were commenting on, Simone girl, you still looked amazing. You performed fabulously. And I love the shade that you threw out there for people to eat up. So absolutely loved it. You did phenomenal. Another issue that this wasn't necessarily the Paris Games fault. This had more to do with the judges, but let's get into the whole Jordan Chiles situation because that I don't even know why this is a thing. Okay. For those of you that might not be aware, um, during the individual floor event, Jordan received her score after competing, and her coaches felt that some of her difficulty wasn't recorded accurately. So they made an inquiry. The judges reviewed the request and they acknowledged that some of her highest difficulty was not recorded. So they made a switch. And when they updated her score, she moved from fifth place to third place, which unfortunately pushed out the Romanian athlete who was already on the floor and could be seen celebrating with her flag because she thought she had won the bronze medal. So Jordan receives her bronze medal, goes through the entire ceremony, is awarded it, celebrating it, very, very happy, right? We're all happy for her. Well, a few days later, I'm not sure who made this inquiry. I don't know if it came from the Romanian side, if it came from the judge's side. I have no idea, but another inquiry came up. And the judges stated that, well, since the American coaches made their inquiry outside the allotted time to make an inquiry, therefore, you were technically 4 seconds late in making that inquiry during the allotted time. We're going to overrule the final scoring. And we're gonna make Jordan give that medal to that Romanian athlete. Are you freaking kidding me? Are you kidding me? A 4 second technicality? That's what you're gonna do to these athletes? I'm still so angry by it. Mainly because Jordan, who is our athlete, and this poor Romanian athlete are just getting beaten up over social media. And not only are people saying the most vile, cruel things to both of them, of course, got to throw race in, right? Because you can't just have a comment, you have to throw in other things. And first off, neither of these athletes did anything, right? They went, they performed, they got their scores. The judges screwed up from the beginning. If they had graded Jordan's performance with all its difficulty from the get-go, then this never would have happened. The fact that they corrected it at the moment, that was like, good on you. You did right. She earned those points. But to take it away on a technicality of 4 seconds, are you kidding me? Not to mention, Team USA came back in a very bold statement that said, we have documentation proving that we made this inquiry within the allotted time. And the fact that the judges or the organization or whatever they go through, they were like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. We're not going to review it. So, yeah, that is why in the total count, I'm still counting Jordan Chiles as the bronze medalist for the event finals in floor. And sorry, her score was higher than that of the other gymnast. And I'm sorry that both of you are having to go through this, but Jordan is the rightful owner of that bronze medal. I'm sorry. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay. What else happened at the Olympics? I will say the men's gymnastics team, they absolutely brought it. They took home the team bronze medal. And I love how people say, oh, it's the first time since 2008. And I'm like, that's a very weird thing to say. Like, the 2008 team was very successful. If memory serves correct, I think they took home the silver. Okay, so the other teams, in the last two Olympics, three Olympics, we didn't have, medals standing on the men's side, but I don't know why, but that comment just came across so weird to me. It's the first time, like when I hear the word first time, I'm thinking first time ever. So they had a little gap, but they brought it and they brought home the bronze medal and so proud of them. I will be the first to admit during the trials, I didn't know who Steven Nedorosik was, right? I didn't know who he was. But myself and the whole world, we know who you are now, sweetie, and you are adorable. Um, I love that people are nicknaming him Clark Kent, and I think it's very apt when he has his glasses on. He just kind of looks like he's just in, kind of blending in, and then the glasses come off, jumps on the pommel horse, and just wows the entire crowd. Um, it is such a difficult apparatus, and I do feel that it was very smart for Team USA to bring a specialist for this apparatus. We needed him to perform, and he absolutely crushed his routine. So bravo to the men and women's gymnastics team overall. Track and field, I was very excited to see my homeboy Noah Lyles. He took home the gold in the men's 100-meter sprint. And my favorite part, aside from his beautiful hair with the braids and the pearls, I loved after he ran his race, he went right up to the camera and he was like, I told you, America, I got you. And I don't know why, but that just made me like bawl. I just thought that was such a sweet moment. I kind of wish the camera had stayed on him a little longer because the camera starts to move away. So his words get a little drawn out, but like you can hear what he's saying. And it was said with so much love. And I love Noah Lyles. I think he's adorable. And he's a phenomenal athlete to watch. So I loved it. Cole Hocker in the 1,500-meter race legit came from behind to win gold. I mean, it was right down like this, like the last, half of the track, and he just went and won and came in first. And I watched it live, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing with my own eyes. It was so impressive. But what's crazy is after he won, homeboy kept running. I'm like, didn't you run enough? Most people are usually panting and, trying to catch their breath, but he just kept running. He was running to his family, he was running to his friends. And I mean, he was just running and jumping after he won his race. Ryan Krauser, Joe Kovacs, they went gold and silver in shot put for the third freaking consecutive Olympics in a row. They are just dominating. And that is just really fun to watch. Katie Ledecky, I don't really know what more to say that hasn't already been said about her. She went to the Olympics and she won even more medals. I mean, she is just a phenom, absolute phenom, but she's so humble and so sweet that like you just can't help but want to cheer for her. Shout out to the women's rugby team. I think they won their first medal ever in an Olympic competition, and we took home the bronze medal. Like, if anybody watched their matches, like, holy crap, these girls are fierce. Do not mess with them. Do not mess with them. Snaps to women's soccer for clutching another team gold. They beat out Team Paris in a 1-0 game. So that was amazing to watch. Team USA continues to reign supreme in men and women's basketball. So overall, just very, very proud of our athletes. Like I said before, we came, we saw, we crushed it. So very, very proud of Team USA. We did good. Cannot wait to see how our athletes do in the Paralympics. So we'll be looking forward to that in a couple of weeks. I will have to say, whoever made the decision to bring Snoop Dogg as our ambassador for Team USA, bravo. You deserve a raise. Everyone, my friends, my family, myself included, we all kept saying, I didn't know I needed Snoop Dogg in my life, but I am so much happier now because he was that constant present for 2 weeks. It was amazing. Um, he was just himself. And the networks weren't trying to make him cater to, the conservative network. Like it's almost as if like the networks were like, all right, you tell us what you want and we'll work around you. And that's basically what they did. They just filmed him being himself. He was there with the families, with the athletes, and he was just the perfect ambassador that this world and our country needed at that moment in time. I will also say, I did not have Flava Flav on my 2024 bingo card this year. To be honest, I don't think I've thought of this man for many, many years. I think since his reality show in the early 2000s, right? Um, but when I saw him in the crowds during the women's water polo match, it was one of those things where I was like, why is Flava Flav there? Like I did not know the backstory. For those of you that also still don't know the backstory, let me bring you up to speed. So I don't know how this happened. Probably should have done a little research before I hit record. But he basically was sponsoring the women's water polo team. At some point, he became aware that these women are working two, three jobs to support themselves in their sport. And so he supported them and made it possible for them to be able to compete in Paris. I literally could, I have like tears coming in my eyes, just like retelling the story. Um, at no point in preparing for the games, preparing for the Olympics, it wasn't until other people saw Flava Flav in the audience where this story came out. And I think that's also what's so beautiful. It's not like he was like, I made fire, like he just very quietly supported these athletes because he cared, because he has a heart and he had empathy. And I think that's just what made the Paris Games so beautiful, so beautiful. All in all, from the unique opening ceremony, even with its bundles, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but overall, it was just beautiful. So I loved the games. I'm sad it's over, but I really do hope they bring Snoop and Flava Flav back for the Paralympics because I think that would be really, really great. Okay, what else? Oh, all right. I gotta jump into some sugar news because I have been all consumed for the last week and a half, and I don't even. I All right. Well, we're just gonna get into it. My heart is still recovering from all the news, and I cannot imagine how he has been handling all of this for the last week and a half as well. Um, for those of you that don't know, um, a little over a week ago, I woke up at 2 in the morning. That's my new thing now. I don't know if that's part of getting older, but now I wake up at 2 in the morning and I'm just awake and I can't fall back asleep. So I wake up, I think it was last Tuesday. I woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't fall back asleep. And so, like anyone else who's up at 2 in the morning when you can't fall back to sleep, what do? We zone out on our phone, right? So I pick my phone up and I see that I have a Weverse notification and it's a post from Suga. So I got really excited. Like, oh, he doesn't do that anymore because he's in the military right now. He's very quiet. So I got excited when I saw his name. And for anyone who needs a reminder, the Weverse application or the Weverse app is basically the K-pop app. It's where all the K-pop artists and their fans go to communicate through the live chats. It's where you can buy merch if there's any in stock. And newsflash, it's always sold out. But it's basically the K-pop app. So I get this notification that Suga has posted a comment, and I got all excited. I open it up, and my eyes are still adjusting to the light because it's dark out. And my heart immediately dropped when I read the first line. And it said, "Hello, this is Suga. I feel very heavy and sorry to have to come as a disappointment to you all." And immediately I sat up and I was like, okay, whoa, what? Like I was reading words and I couldn't comprehend them fast enough. And I was trying to understand what had happened. So I got a little panicked. And as I read the rest of his statement, he basically says, I went out with some friends, I had some drinks at dinner, and I rode an electric scooter home. And I fell down in front of my home where police officers spotted me and they arrested him and they legit charged him with a DUI and suspended his driver's license. Right. So you're reading this and you're like, dang, like this is a big deal. Then I go on the socials because I'm trying to make sure that what I'm reading and what I'm processing at 2 in the morning, I'm understanding. When I first read Scooter, I'm thinking like a moped, like a motorcycle, something like with power. Nope. Nope. He was riding one of those e-scooters, the ones that you see the young kids riding around downtown with, right? Those e-scooters. That's what he was riding on. But because his e-scooter had a seat attached, the police deemed it to be at the same level of a car, which is why they charged him with a DUI. Okay, sure. I get it. Okay. Probably in hindsight, should have taken a cab. We've all witnessed uh Sugar walking, and homeboy can literally walk faster than that scooter was driving. I couldn't understand why this was becoming such a big deal. Like, really, a DUI for riding one of those scooters home? Like, my brain still to this day is honestly not processing it. And I don't know if it's because I'm an American and we see things way worse, way more detrimental. And our celebrities don't even practically apologize half the time. They just brush it over, hoping that, in 2 weeks we'll forget and then they'll move on. And here, Sugar was willingly to offer such a humble apology, right? Like right away, before even news, like he was the one that broke his own news, right? He got out in front of it. So some days go by, and I am watching this story become bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. Like his apology and a couple of people's comments, that was just the tip of the iceberg that happened over the last week and a half. So the Korean news outlets, they had a freaking field day with this story. And they got out in front and they started showing a CCTV clip of what looked like it could be Suga because it was someone that was riding a scooter, but they were riding a scooter on the street, which I don't know if that's a no-no. I don't know if you're supposed to be on the sidewalk. Like, I don't know what the rules are, but apparently they were deeming that as Suga, and that was bad. And he was drunk, and the way they were turning this out to be, you would think that he was like wielding knives and like throwing them at people while driving on the scooter. Okay. They were making a mountain out of a molehill with this footage that they were airing around the clock. Okay. Fans or supposed fans, put that in quotes, supposed fans. Apparently, I was introduced to this new word called antis, which are people that pretend to be fans, but they're not fans. They're actually like haters of the group, which again, I don't know who has that kind of time. I don't have that kind of time, but apparently antis is a thing. So these fake fans were going online and they were starting these campaigns to, why they were leaving the BTS fandom because Suga was riding on a scooter drunk. Someone legit sent 7 of these massive, massive funeral bouquets to Hybe headquarters, which is the record label that owns BTS. And they were demanding that Suga be removed from BTS. I am not joking. All of this happened in a matter of days over him riding a freaking scooter. A scooter, okay? A children's scooter. So, after a week of watching this, my heart was really sad for him, right? I was genuinely worried for this man who I don't know, who will never know who I am, most likely, right? Um, this is someone, one of the reasons I think I felt like I leaned towards him was just his story really just, I don't know, I just melted hearing his story. He is someone who has had to overcome so much. His family were vehemently against him becoming a rapper. This was, going to be, you know, a shame on the family. And he went out on his own anyway to follow his dream. And he had to either, use the money he had to pay for bus fare or for food. And so he used it for bus fare. This is a man who, had to take on a second job before the band debuted because the record label didn't have money. They didn't have money to give the kids. And all 7 of them were living basically in one dorm room. And this man goes out to get another job where he's delivering food and he injures himself to the point where it's really bad. He dislocated his shoulder. But he doesn't say anything because he's so scared that he's not going to be able to debut with the band. And so he performs for years on this horrifically injured soldier or shoulder to the point where in 2020 he finally has to have surgery on it because he can't ignore it anymore. And he has to tell someone. This is someone who has worked so hard and who has had to overcome his own issues with mental health. So I was thinking of all of these things about this person who I don't know, who does not know me, but I'm watching all this ugly vitriol just being thrown around. Um, and I was feeling genuinely sad for him. And I was like mentally sending him hugs and hoping that the people that love him are surrounding him because I don't know what I would do if I looked out my window and I saw 7 funeral bouquets wishing people for me to like leave my apartment. Like I would crumble if that were me, especially if these were people that I was, making music for and building them up and supporting them and loving them, around the clock. I would just be absolutely devastated. So that's the viewpoint that I was looking at it. And so the only thing that I could control in that moment was, well, I can stream his music and I can support him through streaming his music. And that was what a lot of people started putting online, in ways of supporting him. And I loved that. One of his songs that started to creep up on the iTunes chart around the world, I think it crept up to maybe 60 place or 40 place, I'm not entirely sure, on iTunes here in the States, was his song Snooze. Because there's this very famous line that he repeats over and over in the chorus. And I'm going to say it in Korean and then I'll translate it. And I apologize. My Korean is really not good. And since I started the podcast, I have not been practicing it at all. So I apologize. But there is this line in the song Snooze where he says, Deken Shinajakwan, Deken Shinajakwan. And he says it over and over again. And it means everything is going to be okay or everything will be okay. And I just thought there was a moment where the fans were streaming the song. I was streaming the song because that was the message that everyone kind of wanted to get to Suga. Like, dude, we see how stupid this is. We see how crazy the media and these weird people are reacting to you riding a scooter. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, and so that really did warm my heart. I was having dinner with my friend Jessie and she had we're chatting and she was like, "Oh, are you excited this weekend? You're going to the Green Day concert." And I was like, "Yes, I'm really excited and I know I should totally be listening to Green Day right now to like get prepped for the concert, but I got to stream for Suga cuz things are serious right now." And my girl Jessie's like, "Well, what happened to our Suga?" That's how she phrased it. She's like, "Well, what happened to our Suga? The one that we just saw in the movies?" Cuz I brought her into the fandom, you guys. You're welcome. Converted my bestie into being a Suga fan. And so when I showed her what happened, her heart was just very sad for him as well. But I will say after that, uh, the very next day, Karma came out. I don't know who leaked this. I don't know if it was Hybe, if it was Suga. I am not entirely sure. But the actual CCT footage of Suga riding his scooter leaked. And so he was not on the street. He was on the sidewalk. And I kid you not, he was riding slower than the people that were walking. He was not weaving in and out of people. He wasn't running people over. He was in a straight line. And right as he was turning into his apartment complex, the wheel caught on something and he fell, which is what he said he did. He fell down when he was in front of his apartment. But he didn't stay down. He didn't black out. He got right up, like within half a second of falling. He had been wearing a helmet. When he fell, the helmet came off. So he walks over, picks up the helmet. And right as he picked up the helmet, 3 officers show up and they circle him. And friends, oh, it gave such an ominous feeling watching them just circle him and surround him. And he was all alone. And in that moment, I just wanted to like hug him. And then that's when the video ended. Um, so again, I get it. He shouldn't have had drinks and then rode the scooter home. I get it. But I don't think his actions match the level of vitriol he has been facing. Plus, he immediately offered an apology, which is something a certain boy bander from my generation got caught doing while driving. He was what JT was driving drunk um, in a car and refused the breathalyzer, got arrested. I still don't see any apologies that came his way. So here he was driving a very slow scooter with a helmet. As soon as he got caught, he apologized. Okay. It could have been way worse, but it wasn't. So I'm hoping everyone calms down, let this man heal. And at the end of the day, we are all human. We all make mistakes. He took the first important step. He offered his sincere apology. Now we can either accept that apology and continue to support him, or we don't accept his apology. But telling him he has to leave the group because of it, get the hell out of here. Like, I'm sorry. Like, no one has the right to tell someone to do that, especially over something as small as this. I get it. Okay, in some ways, maybe it was big, but that's not the spectrum that I'm viewing it in. I am certainly not going to quit him over a scooter incident. Sorry. Okay. So I am actually headed to the Green Day concert in a little bit at this point. So I need to start wrapping this up. I am so stoked. I don't know if you can tell, I'm wearing my Green Day shirt. I am all ready to go. I have loved this band since I was in eighth grade, which I know might not look it. I look a little younger than I actually am, but junior high was a long time ago. I used to have this massive, like floor to ceiling picture of the group on my wall when I was in high school, and it was just awesome. I couldn't get enough of their music. I still listen to them around the clock today. Um, I remember, I think it was when I was in ninth grade. I went with my brother, a friend of mine, and our dear friend Drew. We went through a little bit of a snowstorm, not a crazy snowstorm, but we drove through a snowstorm to St. Paul, Minnesota to see them perform. And I remember I got to be in the mosh pit and I did crowd surfing for the first time. And it was just amazing. It was amazing to see. Um, when I was in college, or maybe just after college, I don't remember, but my brother and I, we went and saw them again when they were in town. We went and saw them at First Ave. And that was, if you ever have an opportunity to see a show at First Ave in Minneapolis, highly recommend. Just a very intimate setting. No matter where you stand in First Ave, you feel like you're up close and personal with the band. So I loved it. Um, when I was in high school, my brother went to Germany, and I remember him asking me, I was such an idiot as a kid. I mean, I'm still kind of an idiot today, but I remember him asking, like, what do you want me to bring you back from Germany? And we both, I should probably, I need to share this with him because, like, or like share my stupidity with him because we both thought this. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be so cool if you got me a Gruentag shirt? Because green, Tag means day. So Green Day, Gruentag. Um, and he was like, yeah, that'd be so cool. Yeah, apparently that does not exist. So Green Day merch in any country is just Green Day merch. So we didn't know that. So never got the Gruentag shirt from Germany, but we both thought that that would have been hilarious. But that never happened. So um for those of you that don't know my brother, he passed a few years ago unexpectedly. So to to make sure tonight is special, I am bringing my nephew, his son, and so I will get to share his first Green Day concert with him. I'm very excited, very much looking forward to that. My niece Tori is also going to be joining us, and that girl is a rocker through and through. So I cannot wait to share a beer with her at the venue. Um, it is going to be so much fun. Smashing Pumpkins are opening for them, which did not have that on my 2024 bingo card. But I cannot wait to see James Eha. Loved that man since I was in ninth grade. So yeah, I told you I have been a boy band girl since forever, regardless of genre. So that is what I'm going to go to today. So I'm going to leave you now, and I'm going to let you listen to my conversation that I had with Amy. I hope you are open to our conversation. I hope you are open to the ideas and concepts that we talk about. If anyone wants more information, please feel free to either reach out to myself through Libby's audio journal at gmail.com and I will connect you with Amy. And I will also make sure that I put her contact information in the show notes. So have a wonderful time listening to Amy, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How are you? This feels
I
so
am
weird.
good. Yes, it is. It is a new thing.
I know. Well, because it started out as going to your amazing house, sitting in like your little like sitting room area, and then it became virtual. And
Mhm.
today I have a microphone.
Yes.
Which so it just feels very, very weird because it's like we kind of still have the normal setup in virtual world, but
Mm.
this is like totally throwing me off, like right here, the microphone. And so,
The
yes,
third party.
the
Yes.
third party. I know exactly. I feel like normally, when I started doing these, someone asked, like, well, is it weird, like talking to yourself? And I was like, should I be alarmed that it hasn't been, that it's been very like, I've been like it's been almost like the fact that I have myself on, Zoom and I'm recording this way, I kind of feel like I'm talking to myself, but I'm talking to another person. And it was just very like I had a comfort level already in just talking to myself as if I was talking to another person. And so now you're here and it's like, no, no, I'm actually talking to a real person and it's not all happening in my head,
Yeah.
which again, that could be a whole other topic of conversation.
Yes.
So Miss Amy,
Yes.
I am so excited. You are my very first interview for my little podcast that I'm doing, all about finding joy. And I feel like you had to be the very first person that I trial this whole thing out on because you were the person that helped provide all these tools that has helped me find my purpose and my joy when we met in 2015. And then in today's episode, that is dropping episode 4, I walk through how I went through a very dark period the last several months. You were involved, you were aware. Um, but you had also, had just had a baby. And so you were rightfully so focused on your family. And I was kind of not alone, but like I was having to rely on all the tools that you had provided. And I had to do all of the work and get myself back to a healthy mental state. And if I hadn't had all these years working with you, I think it would have been a different situation, right? Like we wouldn't be having this conversation today. I don't know where I would be, but when I was talking with my friends and family over the last couple of months, and they were saying, they watched me transform from being really, really low, not sure how to help me, and then see me climb out of it, and now, I'm fully healed. I'm back and I'm helping other people, um, find some joy. And that's when they started telling me, you need to start doing a podcast. You need to teach people. And I was like, no, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing what I feel comfortable, but who I have no idea if it will resonate with anyone. But they started telling, people were watching, they were seeing me do all of these things. And I remember when I told you, I think it was our second conversation after you came back from maternity leave. And I was like, I need to tell you this. And I really thought that you would laugh and be like, oh, your friends are funny. That's funny. Haha. And you didn't. You were like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is so exciting. So it's been a very weird journey that I've been on, but so much of like my successes you've been in the background, and it's exciting to like bring you to the forefront and be like, this is Amy, this is my therapist, this is actually, I don't even really refer to you as my therapist, like, so it feels very weird to even say that word. I refer to you as my life coach.
Oh,
You are a mentor, you are a life coach, and you are someone that has just been a huge game changer in my world. And I've brought some family to you, at times, and has just been so helpful. So thank you for
oh.
being
Libby, I'm
here.
just honored. I'm so happy to be here, and I am humbled and honored to know you and to see all of the work that you have done. I think that you are someone that has always had the tools and the capabilities within you, right? And I think that when you find someone, we meet and we start working together, it's almost a remembering of your strength and the things that you're able to do. And so I want to make sure we honor that you are so strong and resilient. And we'll talk about that too, about how you came through this. But
Mhm.
in my worldview, everything that you just went through and your ability to come out of it and practice tools and then move towards this podcast, it seems like this beautiful, perfect alignment, for that teaching part of yourself that we know you're here, to do. So
Mhm.
I'm so glad and just happy to be a part of it in any way, whatever way that looks like. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It feels weird because it's like normally when we're talking, it's like, okay, here's what's going on. This is what I've missed since the last time I spoke with you. And like, we're not really doing that. It's more of like, I'm asking those questions now.
Yeah.
And so it feels very weird. But, so I'm getting used to speaking like this, but for anyone that's tuning in, I've asked Amy to join me. I have, a set of questions that I want to talk through. Um, to really understand just how you got put on this path that put you in my path. And that way, if someone else out there is looking for additional tools, additional pathways, avenues to find help, that there could be another avenue for people to reach out to look out to. And so I guess we'll go ahead and hop into it. I apologize ahead of time if it's like all over the place. I'm trying really hard not to say things like I don't know what I'm doing because I don't want to put it out into the universe that I don't know. So I'm changing it to I'm learning as I go. And so I hope it doesn't come across as a little chaotic where we are learning together. But I met you in 2015 in the most random way. I was working at the Jute Salon in Wayzata, just front desk girl. I'm not creative to like do hair or anyone else's makeup or anything like that. And I remember it was August and I was in the break room and there was no air conditioning in that break room. And there was maybe 30 of us just like trying to get our food in a 5-minute break. And I overheard these two girls talking about a session that they had had with you. And my ears perked up right away because the way they were describing it made it seem as if like they had had like almost like a psychic sitting, where like you were, giving them a vision or something. I don't even really remember what it was, but that was how it was perceived to me. And I was like, I had just started a new job, a new career pivot. And I was like, oh, well, maybe this is a sign. Maybe I need to, to meet you. And I remember I reached out and it took like a couple weeks for you to respond. And then we did eventually sit down. And I remember I showed up at this beautiful Victorian style house and you brought me into this sitting room that was all like just I felt like I was right out of like the late 1800s. Like it was just this beautiful room. And I remember thinking, well, she looks just like me. Like she's young, she's my age, like, she's not this like, whimsical, hippie or, tree huggy. Like I was like, she's normal. She looks like me. And, we sat down and we just started talking and you started sharing with me things that you were perceiving about me before we met. And then it kind of blossomed from there. Um, I know I had shared, kind of things that we had talked about, but what do, you've had some time to prepare for our conversation today. What do you remember from that first meeting and how do you go about preparing when working with someone new?
Right. So I remember definitely I remember you being open to whatever the session was going to entail, but also kind of a little nervous or trepidatious because you
Mhm.
had heard these things, but didn't know for sure how it was going to go. And I will say that that definitely happens. I think people come in and don't necessarily know what it is that I do,
Yeah.
and we can talk about more of that. Um, but so I remember that sort of trepidation, but also kind of excitement and mixture. And I think my first feeling was, well, I always want to make sure people feel comfortable, but I prepare for people by sitting down and using my tools and my techniques for meditation or channeling, which we'll talk more about, of course, um, to get perceptions for what they might need to help them in that time, right?
Hmm.
In that time or moving forward. And so I recall things coming in for you, and we can talk about things that aligned or things that didn't align. But when you start to connect on that level, and it's like, okay, there might be something to this, you really can start to, and you did, is start to look at, okay, sure, these things might be coming, and these are the impressions we get, but man, does it really crack open some of the fears and other things that you or other people have about what you're doing here on this earth, right? It immediately will go out into this broader context of like, oh my gosh, I have all of these things I want to unpack. And so I remember that with you, these indications I got of things maybe you needed to work through. It
Hmm.
was like, well, why don't we go back and talk about some of those things so we can figure out why, what it is we're wondering about our future.
Yeah.
And that's what's so beautiful. By the time I meet people, um, they're already kind of seeking, they're already like wanting to
Yeah.
do sort of work. And absolutely, I meet people that don't, and we can talk about that too. But I remember this beautiful sort of like like synchronicity in terms of like I just feel like I need this kind of oomph, and it
Hmm.
always is cool to see that. And so I remember that, and I remember thinking you were just a very warm, person who looked at things with optimism but struggled when struggled to maintain that view because you were coming through a lot,
Yeah.
right? So it was like wanting to be your best self but feeling put upon,
Yeah.
like these challenges. And so then that's where it began.
Ah, well, why don't we start off? Let's Let me give you a chance to fully introduce yourself to my little viewers.
Yeah,
It sounds so funny to say. I have some listeners. Um, who are you? How did you get into the field that you're in? And, what was that calling for you? What did that look like?
sure. So I'll try to sum this up so I don't bore people, but it's an interesting path. My name is Amy Libby. I have always in my life, if I start and tell you that I've always been an explorer and into helping people and into social justice, it will frame up sort of the path I took.
Hmm.
Always been a very sensitive person, and interested in kind of the weird stuff and the harder and strange things in life. So uh, ghosts and all of this stuff that can be woo woo, but also is
Yeah.
is real, which we will see. I am a student of history, I'm a researcher,
Hmm.
lifelong learner, and so I started actually became more of a student of like the metaphysical, kind of the healing or metaphysical realms because I needed it for my own healing. I worked through a lot of anxiety and depression. When I was younger, and it's still something I'm faced with, and I need to rely on my tools for. But I had some really strong spiritual experiences
Hmm.
uh, in that time that started to impact my route, and we could call these like kind of like epiphanies, but things that were more like starting to communicate or channel information from the other side, for
Yeah.
lack of a term, right? And like
Yeah.
communicating with people from the other side. And so I needed to find a path of learn or like a study to help support what was I was experiencing, right? What these phenomenon were. Um, and then parallel to that, I was getting degrees in history, Native American studies, and I
Mhm.
got a master's in social studies education that spans a lot of subjects. Um, and I dove into teaching um, at-risk students. And so that would be students who are like disadvantaged kids or survivors. These kids were like survivors of um, generational trauma, abuse, dealing with addiction. And so working with people in this space who also had cultures and spiritualities that like strongly impacted their beliefs and
Hmm.
how they were in the world really kind of aligned. Um, these worldviews really aligned with kind of what I was experiencing and what I believed, so that like spirit is in everything. And so as you serve as an educator in that space, you're often kind of a therapist or a coach,
Hmm.
right? And these kids were ranging from, 2 years old to adults. So in that time, these worlds were kind of meshing. And then I started doing, about 10 to 12 years ago, I started doing readings. I had a friend who was like, I have some friends that would like to come see you because I'd done it for some friends, and she was like, you should really do this for other people. And I was like, nah. And she's
Yeah.
like, no, like all of your experience and then everything that you do is like accurate and valid and weird and other people are interested in it. And so she kind of kicked me in the butt,
Mm-hmm.
like do this. And then I saw some of her friends, and then it was like referral, and then it just started um snowballing. And as I was doing that, I said, I think I want to also go back to school um, in a study related to it. So it was kind of supportive of the things that I was experiencing. And so I had a lot of philosophy and a framework for some of these things, right? So that I could bring that into that practice. So I went back to school in a PhD program in transpersonal psychology. It kind of bridged what I was doing in both lines of work. And it really lines up with what I feel we need to do when it comes to healing, right? So it's like kind
Yeah.
of grounded in some theories. So then, longer story short, I did a lot of research, a lot of rigorous kind of writing for 2 years in the field, and I got my master's in the transpersonal studies at about that half to three-fourths mark. I Life gets in the way at that point, right? So at that point, it was like, okay, I'm now starting to have babies.
Yeah.
Um, Fun fact, for 99% of this time, I've had a full-time job.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I had no idea.
Right? I know. So like I've gone back and forth, and I have very flexible work, but I go back and forth with how much time I'm able to dedicate,
Hmm.
right? And so I was lucky enough to um, get the master's there, and I went abroad and did a bunch of research, published a psychotherapeutic framework with some of this stuff. And then it was like babies, work, life, and bam. And so I would it be great to go back and finish the dissertation at some point? Yes.
Yeah.
But man, is that a lot of writing? And but I think,
Well, and you are very busy now because you have two little babies
yes,
under 5 years, right? Or is your oldest now 5?
he is under 5.
He is under 5. Okay, because it was
So
2021. Was it
yes, so I had
2020? Okay.
first baby in 2020, 5 days before the pandemic.
Okay. That's what I thought. I was like, I remember it was a pandemic baby, but I didn't remember I couldn't remember when he
Yeah.
came.
And so then uh had a I have a 7-month old, right? Um, but then so what this work looks like now is balancing all of that. I,
Hmm.
went from educating in these different capacities, from classroom, nonprofit, actual government work, to now I teach people in marketing, if you can believe it.
Oh, I can actually. Yeah.
um, which was totally out of my wheelhouse, but it is still teaching,
Yeah.
right? And actually, it allows me to work. It's and actually doing some of this technological stuff, which is funny because um, it came right when I needed it to come, and
Hmm.
it also shown me a lot of working with people who want to walk and bridge two worlds, if that makes sense, right? So like,
Hmm.
how do you be a student in this world, and in if it's corporations or whatever type of work you're doing, and also do the sort of like spiritual work at the same time? It can
Yeah.
be extremely challenging. Um, so yeah, that I mean it's that is a lot of information, but it has been an interesting circuitous path, but with the
Hmm.
same common thread.
Yeah. So you brought up a term that I know, believe it or not, I didn't know this term until I was actually looking at your bio, which I know I read your bio probably at some point. And you are a transpersonal therapist.
Mhm.
And from what I found online is it's been around since the 70s, but if we look at the world, that, therapy and psychology is lived in, you know, going back to the 1970s, that's still kind of newer, right? Even though the 70s was not 30 years ago. Like I want to still think that it was because in my brain I'm still in like the 90s and early 2000s. But in 2024, it's been around for a while, but it's still considered newer in the therapy world. And so what exactly is transpersonal therapy?
Right. So, and I will add something here that the terminology around what I do is interesting. So I would say, therapist is an interesting term because I am not a licensed psychotherapist,
Hmm.
right? And there are I choose that for a variety of reasons. I think it's if you're in therapy and you're working in a clinical setting, if I come in and say, well, I'm also talking to ghosts, I don't know how that goes over
Right, right,
in some of
right.
these settings.
Yeah,
However, I am a student of transpersonal psychology and transpersonal studies, and that informs my work. So,
yeah.
and what's beautiful about that is, as you said, it has been around for a really long time, but psychology has gone in waves in the Western sense.
Hmm.
Um, Transpersonal psychology is sort of that fourth wave, meaning it is now, I would say it's expanding and focuses more on um, broadening the view towards studying sort of spiritual and transcendental experiences. And so it's looking for like deeper meaning and purpose
Hmm.
in human experiences,
Hmm.
how the self can connect to higher consciousness, and incorporates a lot of ideas. And so it looks at religious traditions, cultural traditions, philosophy, mindfulness, mysticism,
Hmm.
as well as modern. So it's holding like all of the great stuff that um, Western theory has brought, but also saying, we have thousands of years of history from other cultures and other philosophies and ways of thinking and spiritualities that are and should be part of
Hmm.
human experience and ways to heal. Fun fact, psychedelics, which are now like the super like treatment du jour, actually, where transpersonal psychologists were at the forefront of using that in a clinical setting.
Hmm.
Um, so it's like a lot of these pioneers in the field were working in the 70s on pushing this forward.
Yeah.
But it kind of incorporates all of the wonderful things we've learned, but says, we cannot forget all these other experiences and philosophies around the world and
Hmm.
ourselves.
So when we started working together, I'm trying to think. I think the first couple of sessions that I had with you were kind of sporadic, but it hadn't gotten to the point where I don't remember when it switched from like every 5, 6 months to now it's like, okay, if 2, 3 months go by and I haven't spoken to you, then that's my cue to be like, oh, I need to reach out and get on Amy's calendar. Before that, I remember I was starting to sit down with you and we would have these conversations where you were really not just making me think about things I can control, things I can't control, but you were asking me, well, what do you want? Like what would if you could ask the universe, what would you ask for? And what you put out, you get back. And these were concepts that I've seen on, probably little like sayings, on little
Yeah.
postcards, whatever. But you were asking me to ask myself these really critical questions. And when my family and friends started, when I was sharing this with them, I met this woman, Amy, and these are the concepts, these are the questions she's asking me. And they would always ask me, um, not necessarily what kind of therapist were you, but they would always go, the one you went to the reading? Like there was always like that connection.
Yeah.
And I would be like, yep, the same person. And they would always kind of scratch their heads. And I would then say, she's kind of like a therapist in 3D.
Mhm.
The focal point, in my opinion, is not, okay, what's going on, what are you seeing? It's we're focusing in reality, we're focusing in the situations that I'm currently facing, that I'm currently in, and the tools that you have provided me are all about giving me my power back. And all of the other stuff that is always on the peripheral, as like sometimes things come through, sometimes things are evident, and just keep an eye on it. And sometimes nothing comes through. And we just, so that's why I always say, I'm like, she's more of like my life coach. It's therapy in 3D. Sometimes there's, a hidden meaning maybe somewhere, but for the most part, like we're working in tangible things
Yeah.
that can be seen. Where I think sometimes if someone here is transpersonal or, spirit or anything like that, then that's when they go, oh, you're not supposed to talk about those things, or you're not supposed to do those things. And it's like, okay, everyone, like, take a pause. How do you feel when someone says, well, that's not real therapy, and like you should get a real therapist? Because I've had that said to me recently, a couple of months ago when I was, kind of going through some things. Someone had said those exact words, well, maybe you need to get a real therapist. And I took serious offense to it. But how do you handle that when you have that either overheard or maybe directed at you?
Yeah. So I'm going to hear this the rest of my life, right? And I believe that I'm supposed to.
Hmm.
Um, it's I don't practice the typical Western clinical therapy, right?
Hmm.
Um, it's just I have a lot of learning to fall back on, but it's, and I'm clear with people, this is sort of the alternative complementary service. But the skeptics, the doubters, the challengers, um, I'm always going to get those, and I know that's part of the path.
Hmm.
Um, so if someone doesn't think what I do is valid, and that Western clinical perspective is the only valid route, great. Libby, like you said,
Yeah,
let
let
them.
them. Yeah,
That is
exactly.
that is it. So that is an incredibly helpful perspective and protocol, right? And so like
Hmm.
I incorporate the pieces of that, and I have an immense respect for it and people in the field. I
Hmm.
have friends in the field. I, have done work with people in the field as well. And that might be the preference. And also what their framework allows them to trust. A lot of this is what people are raised with, what they're raised to think is good or bad. Um, but it's far from the only protocol, right?
Hmm.
And that holy water kind of, um, you made a comment to me once that people throw like that holy water on you,
Hmm.
like, that's evil or it's bad, or, but so many traditions, like unbeknownst even to the people that come from them, reference working with spirits or seers or
Hmm.
healers. There are people who worked in the tribe or clan to do that. And were effective to the point that we actually use a lot of their recipes, essentially,
Hmm.
for lack of a better term, to this day, right? Some
Yeah.
of the more tangible, like herbs or body work. And also people have been having experiences with spirits forever. I cannot tell you how many people I talk to that will be like, well, I don't really believe in that stuff. But then like within the same breath, they're telling me about like the little ghost boy that's like sitting in their house.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's incredible. They have weird stuff happen and it's normal. And I think it's giving people a space to like talk about that,
Hmm.
talk about what it is, what it isn't, what it could be, what it, you know.
Hmm.
And we have tried so hard in the West, and I'm talking about like this capitalistic kind of ideology to denormalize these things and negate the
Yeah.
importance of these things and like our ancestral knowledge that we have like a birthright to, right?
Hmm.
I think that imbalance and unwellness is often a symptom of how far we're moved away from that.
Yeah.
So when people challenge me, while I would love to be able to sit down and have like a huge conversation, um, it's not my job to tell people that they're wrong because I don't have all the answers either,
Right.
like I believe that every soul is here to walk the path the soul wants to be a part of, and that we have experiences that come in to assist or challenge
Hmm.
what we're here to do. Um, my path is to do this and work here and also face those challenges and think about them
Hmm.
and have a healthy skepticism and that's wonderful. That person's belief system is the way it is for the way it is for their own learning, right?
Yeah.
So I'll take the hit any
Yeah.
day as
Yeah.
long as it's people talking, and I firmly trust that the people that I'm supposed to work with show up.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That does make sense. And I love that because, I have friends and family in my life that are very analytical. They rely, on math, which I wish I was strong enough in math where I could also be one of those people. But I fully respect, they're the type person where it's like, well, prove
Yeah.
it. And it's like, okay, I follow, all the science and NASA and all of that stuff too. And a lot of those theories are theories. Some of them are proven, some of them are not. There is still, even in the world, I think anyway, and I could be wrong. There's only so many things that we'll be able to prove. On some things we just don't have the education or the knowledge to really fully understand. And so there has to come a point where it's like, okay, well, what is your gut telling you? How are you feeling? Because, okay, there might not be a math equation to explain everything, but like, let's take a step back and just be like, how are you feeling about all of that? And so I always, because everyone, they fall into two camps, right? Like religion is real, religion is not real. Okay, well, prove it. Okay, well, I can't prove it any more than you can unprove it. And so it's like just because I am someone of faith and I believe in, I always say I believe in God, but I'm also a spiritual person. I believe in the universe. And to me, they are the same thing. Um, how do you feel? I guess, has anyone ever had those types of conversations? Like, well, we'll prove it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. With I've had people from everywhere come up to me. I can't tell you how many times. And that is sort of I always go back to this is where being a student of history and a student of philosophy and
Hmm.
spirituality is hugely important and helpful. And so I like to share specific experiences or stories with people that I have that are indicative of ways we can start to look at ways of proving these things, right? But
Hmm.
I also talk about how the science that is practiced, um, where there's a hypothesis and then we do experiments and then we quote unquote prove something. And then if
Hmm.
it's replicable, it's great, right? Uh, as we know, that doesn't always, it doesn't always prove things, right?
Hmm.
It's what we can observe and what we think is provable. But there's also a lot of research and experiment to back up a lot of the theories that are a little woo-woo or weird to people.
Hmm.
So I will often say, if you don't believe me, that's fine. You don't need to believe me. If you don't believe your own experiences, that's fine. But I'll often point them to research and
Yeah.
say, well, what about this institute that is doing research on this? Or what about, how do we actually bridge some science and spirituality? And that we are doing a really incredible job of starting to do that.
Hmm.
But I do think people aren't necessarily always receptive to doing that. And
Yeah.
it's like, I'm not going to go dump 800 research papers on your desk, you know.
Right. Well, let's
It,
sit
it,
down and let's annotate
yeah.
this.
Because like, also again, not my job to convince you.
Right.
I guess I'm more interested in like what's harder to believe. Is it, so here's a great example.
Hmm.
If someone comes to me and I often help people put this into framework, right? If they sit down and they're like, well, I'm having all these really weird experiences. Like I actually saw something and I feel like I'm hallucinating. Um, you know, and I must be going crazy. And sometimes I'll just say, well, if we take proving out of it, what's harder to believe for you?
Hmm.
Is it easier for you to believe that you are having a mental breakdown and you're hallucinating, which does happen, of course?
Right.
Or could we maybe give you a concept that is that maybe you just saw a spirit as well?
Mhm.
um, give people permission to have all sorts of experiences without needing to prove. Um, and just holding the space for that is really important. And it gets us out of that black and white thinking. This is
Mhm.
true.
Yeah.
good or it's bad, true or not. And so I sometimes ask people that, like, what is harder for you to believe or accept?
Yeah.
Um, and that's not to say that these things don't all happen. People can have, you know, absolute, they're having their psychosis, there is, we need some medical intervention, clinical therapies,
Hmm.
but then so you can also be having spiritual experiences. So it's an also and,
Yeah.
or and. So I love the challenge though. I know I'm supposed to get it, and sometimes apologize to clients because I'm like, you'll get pushback when
Hmm.
you start looking at this stuff and when you start exploring it. But I know that that's what you're here to do. You're
Hmm.
doing it.
Yeah. Well, because I know I didn't prep you on this question because it literally it just popped into my head as we were chatting because it reminded me of a session that we had where you were asking me what I thought my purpose was.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what my purpose is. Like, I mean, especially at that time.
Yeah.
I think we had maybe been working with each other for about a year. I was still trying to figure out this new job that I was in. And, I was still working through all the laundry list of, family things and me things, right? And so it was like purpose. And you had said something that was so profound to me. You were like, "Well, when you sit on it, when you think about it, like what presents itself? Like what are those thoughts that are popping into your head?" And those are the types of clues that I've started to become aware of. And so when I say things like, well, I look for the universe to give me clues, it's
Yeah.
those little pockets, those little like poof, like, have you thought of this? And I don't know where they come from. The thought of doing this podcast, that's exactly what it was. And I was kind of scared to say it out loud because it just I had been, I'd had a conversation with a colleague several years ago where we were like, okay, these kids that were I call them kids, like, but
Kids. Yeah.
that we're managing
Yeah.
these young professionals that we're managing, like, we were blown away. Like they have all these side hustles, they're doing this, they're doing that. Like, how great would it be? And I remember sitting on that thinking, well, what could I do? I'm not creative. I can't do hair. I can't do makeup. I when I go shopping, I just buy what's on the mannequin because I don't know how to put outfits together. So I can't, not creative in that front. I don't understand the real estate market. I don't understand Wall Street. So I'm like, those simple side projects can't
Wall
do.
Street.
I have a fear of buying a whole bunch of product through Amazon and then reselling it. Like, because what do you do if you're
You
stuck with
just named like 20 different side
20
hustles. I
different
love
side hustles? I know. And I was like, so I was going through this and I didn't reserve like, okay, I guess I'm not going to have a side hustle. But it was in that frame of thought where it was like, do a podcast. And I was like, where the heck did that come from? Like, that is so out of left field. Like, wasn't even within the categories that I was even like in my head, but it was just this little thought bubble. And I sat on it for a long time before I even shared with my friend where I was like, I've been kind of toying with this idea. By the time I had brought it to her, I had this thought bubble, this clue that the universe was like pointing me towards, but at the time I had no frame of reference. I had no faith in it. And I was so nervous that it was going to get laughed at, which I technically did when I brought it to my friend at the time. At the time it wasn't a bad laugh out, but it was like, are you kidding me? Like, we're not doing a podcast. Like, and which was totally understandable, right? Like, if I were to bring that to someone, you don't realize the time and commitment that it takes to do this. So it's like, shocker, of course that person didn't want to do it. But it all started from just this like bloop, like, what about this? And so like going back to the point was, those are the types of clues that just when you are leaving yourself open to those thoughts, they come in. And it could just be a random idea that maybe I did have on a subconscious level that I wasn't aware, or a unconscious level, I guess, where I wasn't aware of it, and then I just remembered it. Like, I'm sure, if we're being scientific, I'm sure somewhere we could categorize it that way. But I don't recall having any of those thoughts prior to that. And so I remember when you were asking me, like, well, what do I think my purpose is? And I started, really leaving myself open to that. And I started sharing with you, even in that session, well, these are things that I like to do. And we had come to the conclusion, you had said it, and it was so beautiful. And I just remember being like, oh, I never thought of it that way, but it's really pretty the way you phrased it. You were like, I was talking about my own education and, my political activism that I've always had on the side and the causes that I care about. And you were like, well, and I think at the time I was also training to run a marathon, which
Yes.
that I was like, why I was doing that, because I was not healthy at all at that point in time. But the reason I was doing that was for, a good cause and to bring, access to water to communities that didn't have it. And you were like, it sounds like your purpose is to give a voice to people that don't have one. And that was such a profound journey that we went on together. Like you just asked the simple question, like, well, what do you think your purpose is? And I was like, I don't know what my purpose is. And you're like, well, listen and kind of, listen for those clues. And around that same time, I think I was right before the marathon and I was at like the dinner celebration, the pasta dinner, whatever. And I ended up talking to this individual who turned out to be just kind of a gross person. So I hate that like I have to remember this quote from this
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
However, what they said was still very profound. And it was one of those things where it was like, I had had this conversation with you where you were talking about, well, what do you think your purpose is? And, ask the universe and listen to it. And then, a few weeks go by, and then I have this conversation where, this man was asking me why I was running the marathon. And I was, giving him all, the reasons. And he says to me, well, when there's situations going on in the world, if you can't let it go, if the thought keeps coming back over and over and over again, he was like, that's God's voice telling you to get involved.
Um,
And I was like, that's so crazy because
yeah.
that was very similar to what
Yeah.
Amy was just telling me a couple of weeks ago, where it's like, well, listen to what the universe is telling you. And here I was sitting, preparing to run this ridiculous marathon that I had absolutely no business running because I was not healthy at that point in my life. But the reasons behind what brought me to that was to help, to provide resources, to share a voice in a situation that prior to that didn't really know anything about. But thanks to it, I was bringing other people in and so talk, I don't know if I'm setting it up for a question, but like how you have also said, a lot of times the things that we talk about, be open to those confirmations that come up after our conversations. And so talk through maybe what someone if someone's listening and they've never done anything like that, or maybe they've heard those things but they've just been like, no, that's a weird thought, but now they're starting to reevaluate and go, okay, well, maybe these are the clues that I'm supposed to be keeping an eye on for. What what do you mean by looking out for those confirmations? Okay.
So that is a great question. I think, and that's something I love to discuss with people because very often people get little inklings of, we'll call it information right now,
Hmm.
that whether they're information from the other side or like their higher self or the
Hmm.
universe or God, there's a lot of concepts there, right? These little nudges. They feel like nudges. They feel like, oh, that's a great idea. And people will often see that continue to pop up in really interesting ways.
Hmm.
Just like you mentioned, that story is just a beautiful example of it. That okay, you can say listen, but I think we often can miss the forest for the trees when information kind of comes to us, right? So you have this little idea, all of a sudden it's coming up in conversations over and over. Or you all of a sudden hear a song, that has like a word in there, an exact line in there that will tell you something. Or you start having dreams.
Hmm.
a stranger comes up to you and says something that is directly in line with that. And these are experiences that I think are really important to validate.
Hmm.
It is extremely easy if we're spiritual beings and we're here having a bodily experience and we live in a world that wants us to be logical and really analytical. We'll just say, oh, well, yeah, that's a coincidence. And sometimes, absolutely,
Hmm.
they're sometimes for sure.
Hmm.
There are also situations that are weird enough, synchronistic, that's a great word, enough that happen where you go, oh, that's weird. It kind of takes your breath away, kind of stops you.
Hmm.
And those I like to explore with people and say, all right, let's like honor those. Let's just take a look. We'll feel it out. Is that a weird coincidence or is that like a pretty pointed experience? And helping people identify and then saying, let's just take that for what it is. Let's validate it and let's explore. Okay, so what if then? Like, what's the next step?
Hmm.
And you kind of feel out like, yeah, those are your inklings when you start to, you almost get this cool energy. You start to feel a little motivated. You feel that's like alignment. It's like you're
Hmm.
aligning to what you feel you're supposed to do. That's like that excitement of trying something new. Does it mean it always turns into like your direct life path? Yes and no. We don't know yet, right? But what I believe is that those are little windows or little steps for us to take that move us there,
Hmm.
right? So you move there and then maybe it turns itself into something else, but it's a step your soul wanted to take.
Yeah.
Um, Again, you can make yourself crazy if you go throughout your day saying, well, that's a sign, and that's a sign, and that's a sign, and that's a sign, and that, oh my God, that's a
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah.
That's the hand of God. But you can tell there's differences. And so I like
Yeah.
working on the differences. It's like, yeah, no, that was just a weird dream.
Hmm.
Like, oh, I don't think you're gonna go, actually meet Elvis and make ice cream together. Whatever dream you,
That would be very cool. Yeah.
but like I think there's a difference. And it's
Yeah.
fun to discover that difference. And that's where you had those little life stopping where you went, oh, weird
Yeah.
synchronicity.
Yeah.
And a lot of philosophies talk about those synchronicities,
Hmm.
which is
Well,
cool.
and that's exactly what happened with this podcast. So I had initially had the thought bubble back in early 2021,
Mhm.
like maybe March, April of 2021. And it wasn't until 2023 that I actually, like early 20, I think summer of 2023 is when I finally had the guts to say something to a friend and kind of got downplayed, rightfully so. And then it never went anywhere because I was like, oh, that was a dumb thought. And then fast forward to the life experience that I went through late October, November, December, January, February, March. The turning point that I went through. And then I had two very dear friends of mine come to me at the same time, who are not connected in any way, shape, or form. They've never met. They've never heard each other's names. They are as siloed as you could possibly get. And they started saying to me, have you thought about teaching what you're doing? Because like you've helped me or you're making me feel just very positive. And I had another friend that was like, you need to do a podcast. And it would get to the point where we would have a conversation and afterwards she'd be like, that'd make an excellent episode for a podcast. And it was one of those things where it was like, here I had this thought, random thought in 2021 maybe was going to do something with it. I had found the courage to do something with it in 2023, never went anywhere. And then 2024, two people were coming to me and they were like, hey, have you thought of doing this? And it was like, that was when it was like kind of that final confirmation of like, okay, I am being directed this way. One of the things that I have started to do, thanks to your help, is learning how to be open to something. Not sure where it's going to go, but I'm open to it. And I'm going to play, not devil's advocate, but I'm going to play out the scenario of like, okay, well, if kind of what you said, it's like, okay, if I accept this as truth and this is what I'm supposed to do, what would that look like? And those are the types of conversations where when I would sit in front of you and I would just be like, wow, blah, 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 blah. Like, this is bothering me, this person, da, da, da. And you'd be like, how can we restate that so you have the power back or that you have the power? And I remember just being like, what are you talking about? Like, I have no power. But that's one thing that I will say you have absolutely taught me is like, I have the thought, I go through the experience, and I now have the ability where it's like, okay, in retrospect, what can I control here? What is actually being said? What is going on here? What can I own in that situation? Where do I have that power? And then where do I not have that power? Like, so when I say things like I sit in it and I accept it and I'm open to it, those are all the mental conversations that I'm having in my head. Um, is that am I doing that correctly? Is
Well,
that what, when you say, being open to it, is that, is that the fruition? Is that the path of being open to it and really sitting with something? So if someone is having a thought and, they're getting that confirmation from other people around them or from strangers or, you know, something in their life is confirming this is not just a random thought. This is an idea that maybe you should do. How does one sit with it? Because that's how I sit with it. Those are the conversations I have started to teach myself. And I've had a couple of episodes now where I've been sharing those thoughts. But what
yes.
does it mean to sit with it and be open to it?
Well, I mean, you just make an incredible, you just have a great way of putting how you frame it to be in your life, right?
Hmm.
And I think that this is going to look different for different people, but you touch on the openness, which is huge,
Hmm.
right? I think we need to be comfortable sitting in a space of discomfort.
Mm.
Uh, whether something negative has come up, whether something positive has come up. And again, I'm gonna say that with a grain of salt because there are certain situations that no, we're not getting abused and we're sitting there with that and thinking about, what can I control? Well, no, there are certain
Right.
situations,
Yes.
that are different than this.
Yeah.
Where immediate help is needed, of course, or it's very dangerous, or you need to reach out for help, right?
Yeah. I
But
agree.
when we are kind of at these juxtapositions in life and these transition periods that feel really powerful, that assessment, trusting that we're in the spot that we need to be, as we assess it, and learning how to tune in to our intuition about it and saying, okay, I trust the information I'm getting. I'm going to sit with this. I'm going to take a look at what maybe is doable right now in my life. Is
Hmm.
this something I want to enact, or is this getting me to think about something else? Is this tied to maybe some other things I need to think about or change? Um, and bouncing it off of people. Um, you did exactly what I think is a healthy thing to do, which is you kind of poked around and said, is this weird? And people are going to reflect back to you like, no, this is absolutely something you should do. Your
Hmm.
friends were, I'm doing that. Anyone that comes into your life, whether it's me or anyone else, is going to give you that beautiful reflection. The tools are already within you. You're like, your soul is almost remembering how to do things. And so it's
Hmm.
almost like you're sitting with yourself, remembering, okay, everything I have in my life and all these things I've learned and people I have in my life, what are the next steps that are doable, that don't shut me down, that are motivating? What is my way to do this? What's my special recipe?
Yeah.
Uh, and you have done that in a really cool way. And it does look slightly different for people, but surrounding yourself with the advocates, the people that
Hmm.
cheer you on, um, like energy aligns with like energy, right? So assessing and then putting yourself in a space of the what if.
Hmm.
Okay, so maybe I need to start, how do I explore this? Right?
Yeah.
If you're a list maker, I will tell people to start kind of writing lists, of
Yeah.
like, what are some things I can do? Um, who else are my system? I mean, it's really individual. I also tell people, if it were me in some of these situations, I would sit back and say, okay, I need some time to kind of tune in a little bit more to this and like maybe I get some more information. If people pray, praying or meditating,
Hmm.
what does this look like? Right. And then fears start to come up. Fears will start to come up of like, well, what happens if I do this?
Right.
That is sitting with that discomfort. Um, and maybe you can tell us too how you sort of got over the initial fears you had. Um, because there are tools for that too, but very individual.
Yeah, it is. Well, and that's true. It is. It's very individual. I know when my friends, these two individuals, Chris and Jesse, they were the ones that were consistently in my ear, like, you need to do this, you need to do this. Jesse probably more because she was the one that kept saying things like, "Oh, that would make for an excellent episode." And I remember finally I said this, I think in my intro of the pod series was I am the last person that anybody should be looking to because especially at that moment, I was not in a good head state. I was in a very bad, very dark place. And so in my head, I was like, there is no way I am a beacon of light here. Like, follow me, guys. I got this, like blind leading the blind. And so it was, I kept saying to her, like, I'm not a pillar in the community. I don't have, I was coming up with all the things that I didn't have. And I was actually relaying this story to my neighbor. We were having conversations, and again, I was like, I think I might do this, but I don't know. My friends keep, telling me I should do it. And I was telling her why I shouldn't do it. And I was giving the list of all the things I don't have in my life as to why I would not be a person that can offer advice. And she was like, well, just don't offer advice in those categories. And
Yep.
I was like, well, that's what made me kind of go, well, yeah, because I've never been married, so can't help you there. But I can talk through the experiences that I have gone through. And if someone has found themselves or finds themselves going through similar situations, well, I can talk to those. Maybe I can't talk about buying a house because I've never bought a house. Um, and so it was kind of at that point where by the time I had had that conversation with my neighbor, I had already been like downplaying it myself, giving into the naysayer in my own head. And when that was finally presented to myself or presented to me as like, well, just don't talk about those things, I didn't have an excuse anymore. I had run out of excuses. And now I was left going, that was actually right after that coffee is when I actually started to take the equipment that I had bought with my niece. I had started taking the equipment out of the box and was like, okay, well, maybe I really will do this. Like, not really sure what this is going to be like, but and so I think for me, it was when I ran out of excuses. Um, and I, I think that was it for me. I had just run out of excuses and I was sitting with the positive what ifs, like, well, what if this did work out? And what if this did help one person? And that's also when I changed my thinking on it. It was like, okay, I'm not going in here, I'm not going into this thinking, oh, after the first episode, 5 million listeners and, start like that wasn't my thought. It was always if one person listens, if one person it receives the guidance, maybe that's all it's supposed to be is just for that one person. I don't know who that person is, but I'm going to put my story out there. I will be vulnerable. I will share the tools because I don't know who that person is, but someone is going to hear it and they will have the tools that they are seeking at their time. And if that happens, then I'm okay with that. And so it was kind of weird how it just all kind of as soon as I ran out of my excuses, I was left with all the positive optimism, which is a very weird thing for me to be in because I normally sit in the pessimism side of my brain. But I kind of just I took a leap at that point, was like, and then I think soon after I talked to you about it, and I was like, so I think this is what I'm doing. And I think you were going to be my final, like, you know, don't do it.
Oh my
And
goodness,
you
never,
were not. You were like, oh my
never.
gosh, you have to do this. So exciting. And it was just like, okay, like I had, and what's crazy is as I had started to record episodes, the last person was my older sister, Rebecca. I was like, I don't know how like, what will she say? Because she is very like practical. And which is one of the reasons I loved getting her advice is because it's like, I can sometimes sit there and play, devil's advocate and da da da, but like she will just cut right to the practical side of it. And so I waited. She was the last person I told, and I her response was just like yours, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And she was seeing immediately the positivity. And so it was like, okay, I just went to the most practical thinking person who has who is my older sister, second mother, who if she, there's not many people that can tell me what to do, but she's definitely one of them, probably more than my mom. Like I listen to her guidance more. And so it was like I'd not only had I run out of excuses, but I had run out of people to tell me, don't do this. It was all that confirmation where it was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And it's still very, very scary. Like even having this conversation with you now, I'm holding this little like bottle cap because I'm so nervous because it's like I have no idea how this is going to be received or how it's going to sound. Um, but I have to keep reminding myself that it's not for you or I to receive it. It's there's one person out there that's going to, and that's who it's meant for.
Right. And we often don't know the results of that, right? Which is that's
Hmm.
what the beautiful thing is it could be something we're not even aware of 2 years from now, right?
Hmm.
One thing you said, which I think is funny, I want to bring you back to is you bought the equipment for you bought the
I
equipment,
did. I did.
right?
I did.
But then
Yeah.
you were like, I can't do this, I can't do this. But something in you made you buy that equipment. And that right there is there's another little, oh, there's a first step, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Push yourself. And then also humans get so much in the way of themselves when it comes to sharing experiences and advice and things they've learned through their experiences. We are so scared to do that because we go, well, who am I? Or I'm a fraud, or someone's going to, say you're wrong or you're ridiculous, or why would I listen to you?
Yeah.
We're forgetting that it is so important to human experience that we share lived experiences, we share space to have experiences, right? And that is a
Hmm.
huge part of healing. You, by doing this and sharing your experiences, you're creating a space that is allowing people to think about perspectives, to believe and understand that people are walking the same path that they're walking.
Hmm.
And there's no one in the world that can look at a person and say, this is exactly what you need to do to be healthy and be what we can do is create a loving space for each other to
Yeah.
explore it, right?
Yeah.
And so whenever those fears of, well, who am I to be talking about this? Well, because you have a lot of lived experience, right?
Yeah.
And you're not claiming to say that you have the answers. No one can claim to say that they have the
No,
answers.
definitely don't. Yeah.
We're creating a space coming from love and positivity.
Hmm.
And also it doesn't need to always be this like fluffy, it can be hard. It can be really hard, right? You go, we're going to talk about things that I've gone through and maybe it resonates with you and maybe that plants a seed in somebody else and
Hmm.
that is what the human experience is about. We need each other. We're interconnected like that,
Yeah.
right? And so what a beautiful way you got the validation you needed, but at the end, maybe you're starting to realize that you don't need other people to tell you
Hmm.
that you can share your story,
Yeah.
right?
It's very true because while we're recording this interview today, the fourth episode to my podcast just dropped, and it's me sharing my personal story of the I don't even know how you phrase it, but just the very dark place that I found myself in last winter, last fall into winter, and how I got out of it. And when I was thinking about the caption, right? Because you have to put the caption in for the podcast, you have to put the caption in on social media, and like,
No pressure.
right, I know, like, how do I describe this? And I put in there, I'm not an expert in many things, but I am an expert in my own journey. And I think all of us are experts in our own personal experience and our own journeys. And um And that's where that I think, to your point, that validation comes from, and that gut feeling. Sometimes it can't be proven with a mathematical equation, or recorded on our phones or our cameras. Like, see, did you see that? Like, there is, here is the proof that you were looking for. Sometimes it's, what, I can't wrap my finger around it. I can't pinpoint it, but I have this feeling, and that feeling is not going away. And when I sit with that feeling, these are the other feelings and emotions that come with it. And based on that, here's the action plan that I'm going to take, because I'm going to trial this out, whatever it is, right? That for me, we're talking about the podcast, but I mean, you and I you have helped me go through many of these types of scenarios. And I remember before my brother passed, sharing with him some of these, how I would sit and I would really think and evaluate. And I remember him just being like, sounds exhausting. Like, he had no interest in it whatsoever,
Yeah.
because he was just like, that is exhausting. And there are going to be times where it's like, yeah, it's not for everyone. Not everyone has the capacity or care to want to take it that extra mile. And I think that's too where it's like, it's okay. You don't have to. If this is like too much, getting in tune, inside your head is too much, then that's okay. Do you ever come across someone that you're working with where you can tell right away, like, there's a wall, and you're never gonna cross that? Like, how do you handle someone who just cannot put down that wall?
Sure.
Because it's not a bad thing. That's how they're wired. In my head is how I say it.
I would say yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'm looking for um, right. So, I mean, people come to me for different things, right? I think if they hear about me, usually it's word of mouth, and depending on what they've been told, they are coming because they want to focus on um, I want to see if a certain person comes through,
Hmm.
uh, or I want to know if this certain exact thing is going to happen. And I try really hard to set expectations and talk to people about how that shows up and what
Hmm.
may or may not come through and what it is that I do and how
Hmm.
it kind of works. So I will encounter people definitely who we'll start talking about things, and maybe it's things will come up and it will be like, okay, well, this person is coming through, or this kind of I'm kind of getting this vibe, but it seems to be attached more to maybe some of this stuff that you need to unpack a little bit. And if people do not want to examine some of the stuff that they're carrying, or that I'm picking up or that's coming through, that's totally fine,
Hmm.
right? It is absolutely always a person's choice about what they want to dig into or discuss. And I always kind of explain that to people, be like, we never have to talk about anything you don't want to talk about. Um, but I do believe that by the time I meet somebody, there's a reason for the meeting for both of us,
Hmm.
right? So I think that maybe it's my job to say, okay, maybe this is some stuff that you could examine. It seems to be coming up. Maybe it's something at some point you want to look at.
Hmm.
Maybe that's a seed,
Yeah.
right? That's just a little seed where it's like, yeah, I probably should look at it. Does that mean it's with me? No, not always.
Hmm.
Does that mean it just gets it into their mind? Sure. And that's great. And if that's all it is, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, some people are very um you can feel walls, and a lot of those walls um are built for a reason.
Hmm.
Survive things. We come through
Yes.
unbelievably hard things, and sometimes it's ancestral, sometimes it's from past lives. That's a whole
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
um and so I can say, well, yeah, we can talk about this. I'd love to help you as much as possible, but with a bunch of walls, that can be harder,
Hmm.
right? So I just trust that, like, we meet at the time in their path that we're supposed to meet. And then it also is good for me because I can't force people to do things. I can't make things go a certain way. And so
Right.
it's a reminder to me that, like, you're going to deal with a bunch of different stuff too,
Hmm.
like And how is this situation going to work? And how are you gonna try to reach this person? And then being okay with not being able to,
Yeah.
letting it go.
Have you ever had to have a tough conversation with, I don't want to say a client because I certainly don't think I'm a client, but someone that you're working with where you have maybe had to kind of call a spade, be like you're resisting too much and that you feel like you can't help them. Have you ever come
Yeah,
across those situations?
I will ask a person that. I think if someone is wanting to come on a more consistent basis, right, which is sort of more
Hmm.
the capacity and not just in like a one-off situation, they're clearly wanting to do something, right? They're wanting to do some sort of work. And so I will usually come back to, how is it that I'm able to best help you? Is it by creating space to listen to you? Is it by um, what is it that we can examine?
Hmm.
Going more into the purpose. It's always coming back to sort of the purpose and how to help people kind of align with why they're here and assessing those things. Um, but if that's not what they need, I need to respect that. And so
Yeah.
um, I often will ask the client that. And sometimes clients don't know, but I always sort of bring it up. Okay, what is it that you feel you need? Um, and if it's not me, providing, okay, here's some other resources,
Hmm.
right? Here are other things you might need or would be helpful, and maybe I can't be helpful in that area.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I will say, I think the word that comes to mind that you helped me with, if I had to like pick one word, I think accountability.
Mm.
And not other people's accountability, my own accountability. When I first sat down with you back in September of 2015, yeah, I was in my mid 30s. I was all intents purposes, I was an adult. But developmentally, I had suffered traumas, in my childhood, young adult, late 20s that stunted me in a lot of ways. And so by the time I met you I think I was mid 30s, 35 maybe, somewhere around there. Um, I the word accountability for me was like, well, how am I keeping myself accountable to the things that I want? And and that's where, the very first like real episode, which was episode 2, which was talking about things you can control and things you can't control, because I will never forget the day that you said that to me. You're like, okay, let's unpack some of these things that you just, I just sat down and was just like, there's this going on, there's this going on, there's this. And you were asking me to rephrase these situations in ways that gave me power back, and really focus on the things that I had control over, and then helping me retrain my brain on the things that I couldn't control. And while doing that consistently, I mean, I've been doing that consistently for years now. One of the things that comes out the most is, okay, the things that I can control, I can keep myself accountable to. The things I can't control, well, I can't control that person. I can't control that thing, that situation, whatever is happening, that accountability lies with them. I'm only in control of 50% of that accountability. But here's where I can focus. And um, that is not an easy conversation to have, because having to admit that you having to take accountability on anything, whether it's a simple task like, okay, I said I was going to be there at 8 and now it's 8:30, sorry I'm late. Like even as something so small, anytime we have to take accountability in our own lives, it's scary. I have people in my life that, I've seen them hold on to an experience from their childhood, and that's their excuse. I don't want to say excuse, but that's their explanation as to why they are the way they are today, and that is why they are not going to get along with that person because of X thing that that person did back, 25, 30 years ago. And it's like, okay, maybe we need to unpack that, and but because really, when we take a step back at that, it's like, okay, that individual is not taking accountability for the other, the things that they can control. Um, and I think that for me anyway, having those conversations with you, that's what I took away is okay, if I can be accountable to this, if I am in control of this and I do it and I'm holding myself accountable, that does give me the power over whatever scenario you want to name. Like we could list them off, but it's kind of universal. Um, and not everybody wants
Right.
to do that because that's a hard conversation to have.
Really hard. And I think you make a really, I like the word accountability. I'm going to throw a little wrench in there and say control in any aspect is sort of the illusion,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Because I think in this world, as we know, we can think we're trucking along, we got control, and then bam, something happens where it's
Hmm.
like, oh, well, now this is a totally new
Yeah.
reality.
Just kidding.
Or someone has harmed us, something has happened,
Yep.
and you go, okay.
Yeah.
But that word of control, saying, what can I control, is really, like you said, what can I own about this situation, or what can I do in this situation to give me some semblance of being okay?
Hmm.
Whether it's forgiving the situation, or like learning tools to get over some of that trauma or the things that I've experienced, knowing that I cannot control other people and maybe I'm never going to get this from that other person. What accountability can I take to move myself forward?
Hmm.
Right. Knowing that there isn't much I can control. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a beautiful exercise. It's extremely hard because we think we want and need so much from other people to make us feel okay.
Yeah.
And that's the illusion. We can't, even if we get everything we want from somebody else,
Hmm.
there's we have to figure out like,
We
okay,
have to figure
what
it out ourselves.
yeah,
Yeah, there is that, you know, I love that. And, at the end of the day, the journey that we're on is our own journey. And we have support around us. We have people that fill that journey positively, negatively. There's people we will meet that will add, drama, will add trauma. But at the end of the day, it's still our own journey and it's up to us to figure out how we're going to navigate it because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, we are still the driver of that journey. And I think sometimes we forget that. Oh,
absolutely.
so for anyone that's listening, this is basically how our sessions go, where we'll start on one topic and then we'll pivot and then we'll pivot and we just keep going to the point where we're like, oh my gosh, we're out of time.
Yeah.
And we're coming up on your hard stop, and I know I have another job. I have a full-time job, so I have a call that I have to get onto as well. How, if someone is listening and they would like to meet you and have some conversations, how can people find you?
Absolutely. So website, it's intuitiveaim.com. I am trying to be better about socials. I'm like a late adopter when it comes to
That's okay. That's okay.
like promoting my business, which is
Yeah.
something I need to work on. But my website is a great place to go just to learn more about me and what I do. And I'm again so excited for you, and I think that this is just an awesome thing you're doing. And hello to all your audience, and I hope you wonderful best wishes to all of you on your journey.
Oh, Amy, thank you so much. This has been surreal, exciting. Definitely does not replace a session of ours, which we are definitely due for. And so I'll be reaching out to schedule that. But thank you so much for making yourself available and being vulnerable on my journey. And if, I will make sure to when this episode airs, I will make sure that your website is on my socials so that way if anyone is wants to reach out, they'll have easy access to get to your website. And I will say to anyone that's listening, she's not an instant responder. So it'll take I
Yeah.
remember it took maybe 3 weeks. I'd almost forgotten that I had reached out back in August of 2015, but you always respond. And so just have patience and
And what I will say,
yeah,
Libby, is this, on my own journey and being able to do this more, that's my goal, is to facilitate this as best possible. So I'm
yeah.
moving more towards being that. That is my, um, this is why I'm here, right? So
Yeah,
as
I love
responsible
that.
as possible and meet as many people as I can. And
I love it.
I'm so honored. Thank you, Libby. This is just great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great rest of your day. And yeah, I'm excited. This episode will air in a couple of weeks. And I will definitely let you know. All righty. So that was Amy, friends. What did you think? Her calming presence always puts me at ease. I'll make sure to include her contact information in the show notes. Feel free to reach out to her. She truly has been a life changer for me, and I cannot recommend her enough. All right. Wow. I can't believe this is my 10th episode. It's crazy, right? What started out as an idea, followed by tons and tons of second guessing, has now turned into 10, if I can say so, amazing episodes. Um, this also marks the end of season one. I know, I'm sorry. But I'm going to take a short break before recording season two. I've got some travel for work, some personal travel coming up. So I'm going to take that time. Um, this journey has been incredible. And I have met so many inspiring people whose voices I am excited to share with you in the coming weeks and months. So stay tuned for season two because that is coming soon. I want to express my deepest thanks to everyone who has supported me along the way. Vielen Dank, right? Many, many thanks. Your love and encouragement has meant the absolute world to me. Special thanks to my family for their unconditional love and support, uh, to Rebecca, or I won't call her Rebecca, to Beck, um, my sister, my older sister, who has been enthusiastically supporting me throughout this. And it's just been very, very heartwarming. My mom, uh, even my grandma has been checking things in. My aunts, everyone, cousins that have been reaching out and just giving me just amazing feedback. So to my family and loved ones, thank you so, so much. Um, Special shout out to my homegirls, Jesse, Teresa, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for being there during one of my toughest times in my life. Thank you for physically, spiritually lifting me up and encouraging me to take this leap. I am truly grateful and honored to have you ladies as my dear dear friends. Um, I am also very grateful for those friends that I was able to reconnect with through this apparatus, through this podcast. I am so thankful that you have reached out to me, that we've been able to reconnect, and that my podcast reached you. Um, and it warms my heart to the nth degree. Um, I would like to thank my listeners in Asia, because apparently I've got two. So I don't know if that makes me a BFD in Asia, but I got two. Thank you for finding me. Really did not expect that when I saw some of the analytics that some people I'm pretty certain I don't know in Asia that are listening to me. So, um, Tel Aviv, Japan, thank you. I see you. Um, my hope is that I brought some positivity into your life through this podcast because that was the goal, right? I wanted to add a little bit of positivity to this universe, and I hope I accomplished it. Please feel free to share your thoughts, your opinions, maybe a snarky comment or two, um, maybe some suggestions for future episodes. Go over to Libby's audio journal at gmail.com and drop me a line, a snark, whatever you want. I will listen. All right. I think I have babbled on long enough. I think this is probably my longest episode to date, so my apologies, but thank you for hanging in there with me. This has been quite the journey, and I'm looking forward to round two. So, as always, I think I've babbled on long enough. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, has an amazing week, and I look forward to our next chat. Peace out, friends.